Easter morning was the turning point of history. It began in a quiet garden, in a graveyard, and a sealed tomb. Let's travel back to that amazing day and listen again to the sounds of Easter. The slow marching footsteps of the Roman soldiers. Guards were keeping watch because Jesus had made a preposterous claim that in 3 days he would rise again. Now, although they didn't believe it, they wanted to make sure that none of his followers stole his body and then claimed that his promise had come true. And we can hear the desolate weeping of Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Joanna, who are devastated over the loss of their beloved master. The sky is still dark, and all is strangely silent, except for the occasional murmur of a soft wind. A youth enters the garden and bows his head in sorrow as he listens to the soldiers' footsteps, the wind, and the women crying. He cannot shake the memory of the vile shouts the crowd made before they nailed Jesus to the cross.
Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!
He pictures the way Jesus had been dressed. A scarlet piece of cloth was draped loosely around his waist, and on his head sat a crown made of sharp thorns that cut into his scalp and sent streams of blood coursing down his face. And he can still hear the vicious mob sneering at this gentle king.
Crucify him! Crucify him now!
And then he remembers seeing them spitting at him and slapping him across the face with a reed. Now, as he listens again to the sound of the wind, he recalls the agony Jesus endured and the eerie stillness and the dark pall that engulfed him when he gave up his spirit. And as he listens to the sound of sobbing, he remembers the pained faces of a small handful of men and women who crowded around the foot of the cross. And he puts his hands over his ears, trying again to muffle the cruel cries of the crowd, still ringing in his head.
Crucify him! Crucify him now! Crucify him!
He hears the soldiers' footsteps, and he wants to scream at them to go away. And then he starts trembling with fear, knowing that he or any of Jesus' followers can still be arrested and killed at a moment's notice. Quickly, desperately, he scurries away. And at the far end of the garden, one of Jesus' followers doubles over in tears. She wants to stay as close as she can to Jesus' body, and she just can't bear to leave. She too is plagued by the shouts of his crucifiers.
Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him now!
She recalls it was just a week ago when the children gladly shouted, and they waved palm branches. That was before a governor named Pilate led Jesus onto a balcony above a courtyard filled with people, and demanded,
"What shall be done with this man?"
And they cried out with rage.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
And
Crucify him!
then they stripped and they whipped him. How she loathed that sound. As she listens to the marching soldiers, she recoils over how out of place they sound. They don't belong here, not at Jesus' tomb. How he had hated violence and always preached love and forgiveness. But as the first streaks of dawn begin to lighten the sky, there is a gentle wind blowing again, and then absolute silence. All of a sudden, thunder booms and the earth shakes. From out of the sky, like a lightning bolt, an angel in white raiment appears in front of Jesus' tomb, and the soldiers fall terrified to the ground. Miraculously, the enormous boulder starts to quake, and ever so slowly, the angel rolls it away. And then God's glorious words fill the air.
He is not here. He is risen.
Would you all please rise and join us in singing number 322 in the red hymnal, Up from the Grave He Rose. Well, after this, the world just turned upside down. In our story, it's still morning, but the sounds of Easter are very different. Now, if you listen carefully, you can hear the sounds of nature, like insects buzzing. And Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Joanna gingerly approach the tomb. And when they look inside, they discover the Lord's body is missing. And they run to find the disciples, Peter and John. And they breathlessly tell them that the Master's body is gone. And then the two disciples race to the tomb. And they peer inside, and they find only pieces of linen. Baffled and frightened, they race away. But the women remain at the tomb and weep. Suddenly, Mary looks up and she sees Jesus standing right in front of her. At first, she doesn't recognize him. And he asks her for whom she is looking because he knows that she mistakenly thinks he's the gardener. And then Jesus gazes deeply and compassionately into Mary's sad eyes and says,
Mary.
And a chill runs up her spine as every cell in her body sings out in recognition. And now she realizes that her beloved Jesus is no longer dead, but alive. And joy wells up inside her like a fountain, and she can't help run for shouting at the top of her lungs.
I have seen the Master. He's alive. I have seen the Master. He is alive. I have seen the Master. He is alive. I have seen the Master. He's alive.
That first Easter day was a long, long time ago. But it's as powerful and exciting today as it was then. Out of darkness and death springs new life in Jesus Christ. As winter turns to spring, as the cold finally disappears, the earth awakens. And as it brings forth new life, God is continually bringing new and eternal love to our souls. Alleluia, Jesus Christ is alive. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.